that begins with something as ordinary as a sore throat. We trust doctors, nurses, and the quiet hum of a hospital. But what if that trust is misplaced? What if the hands holding the syringe aren't human? Tonight, we unravel a story so terrifying, you'll never look at a waiting room the same way again. Keep your lights on, and whatever you do, never enter an empty urgent care after midnight. Before we begin, where are you listening from? Tell me in the comments. Chapter 1. The urgent care that shouldn't exist. I think that most of us have an inherent trust in people in certain positions. A badge, a degree, a lab coat. If a lawyer gives you advice, you take it. If a cop tells you to stop doing something, you stop. If a doctor tells you that you're sick, you start to worry. It's all part of the system of society. Those jobs have authority, and we are taught to respect that authority with little to no questioning. For the most part, this is fine if the person really is a lawyer, a cop, or a doctor. Significant damage can be done when someone either pretends to hold this power or uses it for less than noble reasons. I had never considered this, aside from the tragic and horrific stories of real abuse of police power. When was the last time you heard a story about a fake medical office? I should have checked the place out. But, in my defense, I had high fever, a very sore throat, and it was 2 a.m. I was going to go to the ER. I actually drove there and walked inside, but I saw the waiting room was packed. Dozens of people with varying degrees of illness or injury took up every chair and spilled onto the floor, waiting for a bed to open up in the back. I knew this would take hours. I did not want to wait all night long for the expected diagnosis of strep. I have had it many times, so I know what it is when I get it. A quick prescription of antibiotics was all I needed. So, I left the emergency room feeling worse than when I arrived. I did a quick map search for 24-hour urgent cares in the area, and found one only 1.5 miles down the road. The practice was in a little business park and situated in a small row of connected offices. There were no other cars in the lot, so I parked in the space right in front. The window had a big, red, neon sign that said, "Urgent Care." The widescreen printed text on the glass front door displayed the practice name, said they were open 27/7, and walk-ins were welcome. Huh? 27? I thought the fever was getting to me. I shrugged it off, got out of the car, and went inside. The door made a friendly chime as I opened it. The waiting area was completely empty, which didn't surprise me at this time of night. There was a reception desk directly across from the door. Plexiglass shielded the border of the desk from the incoming patients. An older woman with a squat build, thick glasses, and kindly face sat behind the desk. She looked up from her computer screen as I came in, and she smiled at me. "What are you here for?" she asked, while grabbing one of the many stacked and preloaded clipboards sitting to the right of her keyboard. "I need to see the doctor. I think I have strep." I croaked at her, as my voice had become raspy, and it was difficult to speak. Her face shifted into an empathetic frown. There was a sign-in sheet on the counter, several names written down along with the sign in time. These had all been crossed out, but the one right above the line I used for my name had a sign-in time only 20 minutes before my arrival. She handed me the clipboard through a small window in the plexiglass, pointed to the cup of pens, and then reminded me that if I had a cough or fever, to please wear one of the masks available in the box beside the pens. I donned my mask, grabbed a pen, and sat down in the cluster of blue hard plastic chairs in the waiting area. I was grateful for the mask. The whole place reeked of some kind of industrial strength cleaner. It seared the lining of my nostrils and made my already sore throat feel like I had swallowed bleach. I filled out the 10 pages of who the hell cares about all this shit, I just have strep throat, and returned it to the woman behind the glass. She took it, skimmed pages, and told me to have a seat. I didn't register the red flags because everything from the generic artwork and cheap plastic chairs to the stack of outdated magazines and new drug pamphlets were exactly as expected. It didn't bother me that the forms had strange extra questions like, "Do you live alone?" and "Would you consider yourself close with family friends?" I didn't care why the clock on the wall wasn't working. The door to the patient rooms opened, and the woman from behind the desk called, "Lee Fleur." I looked up, slightly confused that she beckoned me back like that since there were no other patients. Maybe it was force of habit. "You'll be in room 3, she said, and guided me to the heavy wooden door with a silver 3 nailed into it. I went inside, flopped into the chair in the corner and waited, again, to be seen. I was getting frustrated at how long it had taken. Were there actually other people here waiting in the other rooms? If so, where were their cars? I doubted everyone would Uber. Too late to leave now, though, I thought. The countertop next to the bed had a solid layer of grime. The glass jars that would have normally contained swabs, alcohol pads, or cotton balls were empty. The longer I sat, the less faith I had in the competency of this office. I guess they used the abrasive cleaner on the floors, but they couldn't dust or restock the rooms. Finally, a mousy little nurse in Scooby-Doo scrubs came in and took my vitals. She wrapped a dark blue blood pressure cuff around my arm, hit the button to start the machine. When it released its python-like grip, she gave me a disapproving look. "Pressure's a bit high. 185. 92. I wanted to say that being kept waiting for over an hour for no apparent reason was enough to elevate anyone's blood pressure, but I feigned surprise and replied, "White coat syndrome, maybe. White coat syndrome, maybe?" She laughed, harder than she should have. It wasn't a good joke. It was barely a joke at all. Her laugh stopped abruptly. It didn't fade or trail off. 1 second, she was chuckling like it's the funniest thing. The next, she is totally silent. Not even a smile remained on her face. It was jarring. She told me to hold out a finger so she could check my glucose level, something other places hadn't checked before. Not for strep, anyway. I was so thrown by the laughing that I didn't question it. The little needle jabbed my skin, and a small droplet of blood bloomed on my fingertip. She collected it on a strip, put it in the small machine in her hand. The machine made a few beeps, and she frowned at the display. Her eyes darted at me, then back to the machine. "Is something wrong? Is my sugar high? Or low?" I asked, unsure if high or low meant good or if both were bad. "I think the batteries in this thing might be going. I'll just change them out, and we can try again." She walked briskly out of the room. I am not a hypochondriac, but I must have channeled one in that moment. I started going through 100 different diseases I might have. I whipped out my phone and tried to search for anything related to wonky blood sugar readings. I was on my 3rd article about diabetes symptoms when she returned. The device in her hand was different now. The one before was a clunky metal box about the size of a coaster, but this one was smaller, hardly as big as a pack of gum, roughly the size and shape of one of those old Tamagotchi toys from the 90s. She must have seen my confusion, focusing on the thing she was holding. She looked down at the device, hesitated, frowning. She stood frozen for an almost imperceptible beat, but then waved her hand airily and reassured me. There's a new tech that keeps moving my good gluckometer. I can never find it when I need it. That was an old one before. Found this little guy while looking for the batteries. Her smile was wide and comforting, but it didn't reach her eyes. She stuck me again. Everything was just fine. I had not realized how tense I was until then. Every muscle relaxed. She told me to sit tight, and the doctor would be right in. I only waited another 5 minutes or so before there was a light knock on the door. Without waiting for a reply, the doctor came in. He scanned my chart while standing in the open doorway. Once he was done, he took a deep breath and sat down on the rolling stool on the opposite side of the room. He had not made eye contact or even looked in my direction the whole time. He was tall, lanky, as if his limbs were ever so slightly too long for his body. The bright green of his eyes stood out from his exceptionally pale skin. His face was too bland to be considered handsome or ugly. His white lab coat was too short, and his pants were too long. In any other setting, alarm bells would have been blaring in my brain, but not here. So, Miss, he checked the chart again. Le Fleur, he asked. I nodded. Looks like you have a fever and sore throat, correct? I nodded again. Okay. Simple enough. Probably strep throat. But we will take a few swabs to make sure, he said briskly. This felt right. Back to the norm. If it is strep, we can start you off with an antibiotic injection and a prescription for antibiotics to take in home. At home. The doctor's voice was deep and soothing, utterly in contrast to his appearance and demeanor. There was something wild in his overly bright eyes and shifting in his expression. But he was the doctor. He tore open a small paper package and pulled out a cotton swab. The eye contact was as he told me to open wide. He had an eagerness to his tone, but his face was rigid, suppressing the emotion underneath. The swab poked aggressively into the back of my throat. The jab hurt, and I gagged. He placed it into a slender tube and stood up. He left the room for only a moment. Why did I not realize at the time that it was too quick? The swab should take several minutes, like every other time I had been tested. He returned with a large needle and a vial of the antibiotics. The liquid was clear, but as he drew it into the needle, it was a cloudy, yellowish color. He had the briefest flash of a grin before cleaning the spot on my arm with the alcohol wipe. He took a beat to steady his hands. Was he nervous? Get it? The shot burned, more than it should have. It hurt so much that I actually screamed in pain. Instead of stopping, he quickly pushed the plunger fully down to drain the rest of the injection into me, while gripping my arm like a vice. After that, the details are murky. Chapter 2. The hospital that isn't right. The next thing I knew, my eyes opened to nothing but white. White walls, White sheets, white floors. I was lying in a hospital bed. My body felt heavy, like the back of me had been filled with sand to weigh me down. I tried to cry out, ask someone where I was and what had happened. But before I could get out more than a groan, a nurse bustled in, heading for the machines and IV bags next to me. She must not have noticed I was awake. I reached out to her while she was taking a glass vial from her pocket, and she yelped and dropped the bottle. I heard it shatter on impact with the white-tiled floor. When she regained composure, she started pressing buttons on the wall behind me and called for the doctor. Well, look at you. Finally, back among the living. I thought you were going to sleep forever, like Snow White, she said, grinning at me. Wait, what? Does she mean I died? 1,000 questions in my head fought to be asked first. But the winner was, huh? Her grin widened. You had an allergic reaction to an antibiotic. You were rushed here to the hospital from your doctor's office. There were some complications while in the ambulance, and you have been in a coma for a year. Oh. That's not possible, I argued desperately, the words slurring as they tumbled out of my mouth. I struggled against my sluggish limbs to sit up. The nurse tried to ease me back down on the pillows as the doctor came through the door. This was a different nurse, but it was the same doctor. He, too, told me about my reaction. The ambulance, all of it. Sharing the story as if it were a practiced routine. There were no mirrors in the room. I didn't have time to register that I was in the same clothes I wore to the office, or that the hall outside my door was completely dark. There was a scream somewhere in the distance, and panic overtook me. I struggled to rip out the IV, and my arm demanded to leave. My movements were too slow. My limbs felt heavy and weak. The doctor snatched my hand away from the IV, holding it too tightly while making sounds. He patted my shoulder with a clumsy, forced gesture, never lessening his steel grip. The nurse surreptitiously moved to block my view of the door. The memories are clear now, but nothing was clear then. Neither of them was able to calm me with words, so the doctor injected what he called a mild sedative into my IV. The drug hit me within seconds. When I woke again, I was alone. My arms and legs were now strapped to the bed. I could lift my head and shoulders, but only slightly. I stayed quiet, fearing another sedation. I tried to take in everything. Was this truly a hospital? I knew everything felt wrong. Where were the rhythmic beeps of medical machines? Where was the bustle of daily hospital activity? There was no television in the room, no bathroom, no chair for visitors. Nothing but the bed, the IV stand, and a small wooden wardrobe on the wall beside the thick metal door. Hospital rooms don't have metal doors. They don't have locks. I didn't see the door when I first woke up. It opened outward. I could not move my hands to reach the IV. They ached when I tried to use them. My legs wouldn't move at all. One of the bags connected had the same yellow substance from the office. There was another hanging next to it with a purple liquid. It seemed too thick. My brain struggled to shake off the haze, as I thought I saw the second bag move, like there was something squirming inside it. The unbearably bright fluorescent lights hurt my eyes and caused me to see everything with a blank white vignette. I heard footsteps outside the door and squeezed my eyes shut, feigning sleep. The rough clank of a metal lock. The slight groan of a massive door opening sent my heart rate into a chaotic sprint. An ominous, low growl of a chuckle sounded an inch from my face. Another nice try, Miss Lafleur ... You never seem to learn. The breath was sickly, smelling both sweet and foul, like rotting meat. The burn blazed in my arm once more, and I sank into nothingness. The next few days, was it days, were a blur. Fishbowl memories float to the surface, then drift away. I was in and out of consciousness, only taking in snippets at a time. I would wake and not be able to open my eyes, or the bed was now on the other side of the room, or in a different room, or in a different... The doctor stood at the foot of my bed, watching me with a hungry smile, enormous black pupils, leaning toward me, as a chef would lean over a pot to take in the aroma. The nurse talking about me to no one I could see, but mostly just seeing the cold, empty room. There were other nightmarish images that haunted my feverish, drug-induced fugue state. The doctor's face contorting, elongating, and snapping back into place. The nurse turning her head all the way around without moving her body, like an owl. Screams that seemed both far away and entirely too close. The feeling of someone hovering over me, breathing hard. Chapter 3. The Escape and the Doppelgänger. I had no way of tracking passing time. There were no clocks, no windows. I could only guess by the length of my hair how long I had truly been there. It was just above shoulder length that night. I went to the urgent care. My hair doesn't grow quickly, but now it was nearing the middle of my back. Someone would come in occasionally to sponge me down, brush out my hair, clip my nails, and brush my teeth. I was usually unconscious for this routine, but I was waking up more often and staying awake for longer stretches. My mind was clearing, but I made every effort to show no signs of change. I remember the day I could feel my feet again. My big toe wiggled, and I nearly wept with joy. Whatever they were using to keep me drugged and immobile wasn't working anymore. But if I woke up and moved, even opened my eyes, someone would walk in seconds later. I spent an eternity awake, pretending to be comatose. I had become quite the actor. I had to camouflage my attempts to assess my strength, control of my limbs with shifts that could be considered normal sleep movement. I could fully feel not only my feet, but both of my legs. The muscles always felt tight, like compressed springs ready to jump into action. I hoped this was a positive sign that my body had not withered into atrophy. My hands and arms felt stronger than they ever were before this place. I could peer through the tiniest gap in my eyelids, through the eyelashes. There was now a third bag hanging from the ivy stand, containing a deep, brownish red liquid. The door was open more frequently. The nurse and doctor were gone for longer and longer. Were they confident in my imprisonment? Was it a test or a trap? I didn't know, and I no longer cared. I had to find a way out. If I tried to sneak out, they would somehow see me, like every time I had been obviously awake. How long had it been since I had left this bed? Could I remove the restraints? Could I even stand? If I risked it without plan, I would never make it out. I decided to test the reaction time to me waking. Would it be long enough to get up? see if I could even drive my body like I used to. The alternative, just staying in this bed, paralyzed to inaction from fear, was not an option. I let my eyes flutter open. I moved my head groggily, keeping up the act for what they could see. Under the sterile white sheet, I made quick attempts to remove the restraints. I pulled up my wrist in a sharp upward motion. It gave slightly, and I heard the sound of Velcro pulling away from itself. Not handcuffs, not locks. I sat up straight, leaving my hands bound by the restraints I knew would not hold when the time came. I kicked my legs as though in a panicked attempt to escape, concealing the newfound knowledge they would move as I needed them to do. Footsteps. Not even a full minute. It was not going to be easy. I let the nurse sedate me. The injection didn't even burn this time, but there was a tinge of drowsiness. I let my whole body go limp. Dossa. The nurse gently stroked my face with a finger. I wanted to recoil, get away, eject myself from that touch, like ancient, cracked leather. It didn't feel warm but hot, scorching on my bare skin. She spoke aloud, not to me, but what I started picturing as her imaginary friend. She's a fighter. She should be ready soon. Her voice was wrong. It didn't match her appearance. She was older, face wrinkled and creased. But the voice was light and youthful. It took every ounce of willpower to not physically react to this. Did she know I was faking? Ready for what? As I laid there, forcing my body to be calm, she started crying. A deep, horrible sobbing for several minutes that trailed off into a wet, choking cough. It went on for too long, but then it morphed into a guttural, gurgling, chilling laughter. Nothing in this place had scared me more than this moment. And then, thud. Despite my desperate self-control, my eyes popped open. The nurse was crumpled onto the floor, a thin river of blood flowing from her stomach and pooling around her. Looming over her was a woman, her back to me. I could see the dripping surgical knife in her right hand. She was trembling, and her breaths were hard, ragged, and rasping. I was unable to speak. My mind could not decide in that split second whether this new person was friend or foe. The next moment, everything I had known until then was ripped away. She turned toward the bed, slowly as if each movement had a terrible cost. Her shoulders hunched forward. Her arms were unnaturally long. She had saved me. I should be nothing but thankful. But the fear I felt at her presence was overwhelming. I could not understand why until I saw her face. My face. No. Almost my face. The eyes were a fraction too wide. The jaw was squarer, and the mouth stretched across as if being pulled from both sides. My heart stopped. I was so jarred by the impossibility of this sight that I felt blackness creep into mine, shutting down, fully rejecting what could not be real. The sharp sting of a hand across my face brought me back. That face. It was me. But it was wrong. There was something animalistic and primal about the woman before me. Her stance was akin to a gorilla, lumbering yet powerful. She stripped off the sheet covering me and ripped off the restraints. I crawled off the bed, wobbling on my unsteady legs. Are you? Anger, confusion, violation. I bottled all of it up into those 3 words and flung them at her. She said nothing. There was something like sadness in her eyes. She pointed at me, and then the door. I was still too stunned by her that I could not move. Her head tilted, her eyebrows furrowed, and she looked to be concentrating intently. For God, again, it wasn't a human voice. There was too much growl in it. It was too low, too hoarse, and the words seemed to cost her a great deal. What did she mean? Did we know each other? Had my memory been tampered with in this place? Heavy tears pooled in those eyes that were mine, but not mine. Her lips parted, trying to speak again, but all she managed was mouthing the word "go" over and over as tears streamed down her cheeks. I wanted answers, but this was it. I found my balance and went to the open door. The hallway was dark, a long empty corridor with 4 other doors identical to mine. There was one dim bulb nested into the ceiling at the end of the hall. Just below it, I saw the mangled, bloody body of the doctor. Bile erupted from my stomach, and I was halted, doubled over to let my body heave it out. Then I ran. I ran straight past the doctor, not sparing him a single glance. I wrenched open the door at the end of the hallway. It led to a small stairwell, so I climbed. If I stopped, this place would swallow me. My muscles screamed. My lungs burned as I ran up and up the countless stairs until I reached the final step in front of the only other door I had seen. I opened it to reveal the blinding sun and the world I had been taken from so long ago. I was terrified to take that first step into the cold, fresh air. Why? I shoved the doubt out of my mind. I could not afford to hesitate. I stumbled out, willing my legs to keep going. I was barefoot, wearing a hospital gown. I had no money, no phone, no idea where I was. I was surrounded by large brick buildings in varying stages of dilapidation. I walked through a maze of alleys, empty lots, until I reached a real road. I never knew I could be so thrilled at the sight of a beaten-up little VW Bug rolling down a pothole-ridden blacktop. I lunged onto the street, flailing my arms, begging the car to stop. The driver bared down on the horn, swerved around me, and sped away. I trudged onward, finally making it to a tiny gas station. I walked in. The young man behind the counter barely reacted. He raised one eyebrow. "Rode?" A wild, manic laughter burst out of me, unbidden. He shifted uncomfortably and asked if I needed anything. "Phone, please," I said breathlessly, regaining composure. He handed me his cell phone and I dialed 911. Chapter 4. The Body in the Grave and the Clones. 2 police cruisers and an ambulance arrived on the scene. About 20 minutes later, a rush of relief flooded me. But as the MTs emerged from the ambulance, I went cold with dread. What if they aren't really IMs? What if they take me back? I broke down, collapsing onto my knees in the middle of the greasy little store. The police asked me 1,000 questions. I had very few answers. I was checked out by the EMTs, one offering to give me something to calm my nerves. "No," I yelped, retreating a few steps back from the man. He raised his hands in a gesture of silent apology. I refused to ride in the ambulance or be taken to the hospital for further examination, although they strongly encouraged I do so. I rode in one of the police cars in order to give a full statement back at their precinct. After driving for a few minutes, I asked for the date. The cop paused for a moment, looked at the laptop mounted between the two front seats and said, May 3rd. I had gone to the urgent care February 6, 2019. What year? 2024, he said, bemused. I spent hours giving my statement to increasingly skeptical officers. They told me I was reported missing by my cousin, mid-March 2019. My apartment was abandoned. My car was also abandoned. I had driven it to the urgent care the night they took me, but it was found in the parking lot of my apartment building. What happened to my stuff? I asked, as if it mattered. The officer looked at me. Guilt splashed across his face. Your apartment was cleared out. Items were either donated or tossed out. The apartment was cleaned and rented back out. The car was impounded, eventually sold at an auction, he told me. Later I found out that after a year with no leads, nothing, my family assumed I was dead. They gave me a funeral. I have a tombstone, a small, rather shitty little slab of granite that simply has my name, date of birth, and death. I won't say that wasn't a kick to my ego. I have a grave, an empty coffin. My hollowed bit of earth has been the only thing holding my place in this world while I was hidden away. There was no evidence of the urgent care existing, at least not when I went in that night. There had been a small medical practice at that address, but it had closed its doors back in 2017. They had moved to a larger space closer to the downtown area. I gave a description of where I was held, what I could remember of the surrounding area, and it could not have been that far from where I was picked up since I was able to walk there. It took a few days for the officers to narrow down the options. Finally, they told me the most likely place was this cluster of abandoned warehouses. I urged them to send teams and storm the place. Get SWAT, get the National Guard. They did nothing. Unfortunately, Miss LaFleur, the whole place is nothing but brick and dust. Couple uniforms were sent over to check it out, but it's been completely demolished. I sat there, dumbstruck for a few moments. No, you're wrong. I was just there, not 3 days ago. They can't just blow up a bunch of buildings. Someone would have heard it, or seen it. Apparently no one had. One officer told me that the whole area had once been used by the military for storage, and supplies for the base a few miles west of here. But they had long since stopped using it. I had nothing left to give as proof. They pitied me. They knew I had been through trauma. There were clear signs of psychological damage. I must have spoken to a dozen different shrinks. I eventually let them do a full medical workup, provided they let me stay inside of at least one door and one window, both looking to the outside and no drugs of any kind. I had bruises in varying states of healing all over my body. I had had a couple cracked ribs, and they told me the injuries were consistent with fighting. I had no memory of even being out of the bed, but they said it was not possible to have been bedridden for that long and not have some signs of atrophy or even weakening. My muscles and skin were toned. My reflexes were above average. Nothing in my story could be corroborated, not even by my own body. Eventually, they released me to my relatives, told me they would be in touch with any new information, and to take care, as my cousin led me to her car, speaking to me as though I were an unstable bomb made of the most delicate glass. I looked across the street. She was there, just visible in the shadows. I shrieked and pointed. It's the other me. There. Go. Go. She's there. They were all too startled by and concerned about me to see the not me slink back into the darkness and disappear. I have been trying to convince everyone, including myself, that I am not crazy. I know what happened. I was there. It was real. One day, about 6 months after my escape, the phone rang. Emin, Lafleur, this is she. Who is this? This is Officer Keshner. Would you be able to come down to the station? We have a few follow-up questions regarding your case. Of course. Did something happen? Did you find something new? I asked, intense excitement and dread rising like a tide inside me. Yes, I can't discuss the details at the moment. But you said you were an only child, correct? Ooh, yeah. And my parents passed away years ago. It's just me. They have her, I thought. That had to be it. They think she's some bizarro twin. Oak. Can you come today? Now? How? He asked. Yes, I will head there now. I had been living in an apartment on my own for almost a month. My cousin Michelle had insisted I stay with her after everything. I didn't object. She was always like the little sister I never had. Her parents, my mother's brother and his wife, had moved to Florida when she was heading to college. She has 2 older brothers, Ryan and Lee. The whole family came together when I popped back into the world. It was nice, but then they all had to return to their lives, drifting off back to familiar routines. Michelle had a small, 1-bedroom place, and after a few months on the couch, I refused to let her give up her bedroom for me. I knew I needed to get my own place. I settled for a unit in the same complex as Michelle, and we still spent most every evening together, watching television or just talking. So, she was sitting on my couch when I got the call. Who was that, Liz? She asked, seeing the fear etched into my face. The police. I have to go to the station. For questions, I told her in a robotic tone. I felt numb. Let me get my shoes on. I'm coming with you. I told her it wasn't necessary, but she wouldn't hear it. We climbed into her little blue Kia and zipped off down the road. We parked in the little lot in front of the police station. I took a moment to take deep breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. It didn't calm my nerves. We met Officer Keshner at the front desk. He was an abnormally tall man, thick like a bodybuilder with a shaved head and a square jaw. He told Michelle to wait in the row of chairs near the door. She was about to protest, and I waved her off. I'll be fine. I'll tell you everything when I get out, I said as reassuringly as I could manage. The officer led me back into a small room, similar to the one I had given my initial statement. He gestured to a chair on the opposite side of the table that occupied most of the room space. Then he sat down in the other chair. He had a blue, official-looking folder in his hand and sat it on the surface between us. Lafleur, I'm going to show you some photographs. They are not going to be pleasant. If you need to take a break or anything, let me know. You're not in trouble here, but we've never encountered a situation like this. The captain has been on the phone damn near all day trying to figure out if this needs to be handled by the FBI, military, or some other alphabet agency. He told me, keeping his voice level. He opened the folder and removed a stack of pictures. He laid them in a row in front of me, giving a gentle thwack of the print paper as each hit the tabletop. There were 5 pictures. The first was of a man, bloody, caked in dirt. The doctor. The second, my eyes locked onto the horrible image, and my heart sprinted away, urging the rest of my body to follow. It was me, dead. This wasn't a strange, poor copy like the one that saved me. This was me. My ears were ringing, and I didn't realize I had jumped up from the chair and backed into the wall behind me. Keshner was sliding a small black trash can next to me, and, upon seeing it, I retched. I threw up hard, as if my body was attempting to expel something lethal. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, my entire body trembling as I forced myself to look back at the photograph. It wasn't just that the dead woman looked like me. It was me. The same sharp angle of my jaw. The same faint scar on my eyebrow from a childhood fall. The same freckle just below my left eye. Her hair was a little shorter than mine. Her skin pallid, but otherwise, she could have been my reflection frozen in time. A thick, jagged wound split across her throat. Dried blood darkening the fabric of her hospital gown. My stomach lurched again, but there was nothing left to bring up. I pressed my back against the wall, desperate to put more space between myself and the impossible truth staring up at me from the table. "This was found 3 days ago," Keshner said, his voice low but steady. An anonymous call led officers to an abandoned lot near the old shipping yards. She was already dead when they got there. Her body wasn't fresh, but it hadn't started decomposing the way it should have. Toxicology came back inconclusive. No prints in the area. No security cameras. And no ID except for this. He reached into the folder and slid a plastic evidence bag across the table. Inside was a hospital bracelet, still smudged with dried blood. I didn't need to read it. I already knew what it would say. La Fleur, Elizabeth, admitted, February 6th, 2019. My vision wavered, my pulse hammering in my ears. This was supposed to be my hospital band, the one I had woken up with, the one that should have still been on my wrist. But I was alive, wasn't I? My mind erupted into a cacophony of unanswerable questions. What did those people do? Are these clones of me? How? Were they just made to look like me? And the one thought, circling like a vulture above all the others. Am I real? Mine? I remember my life. All the things you're supposed to remember. My childhood. Growing up in a nice little neighborhood. Friends. Relatives. Birthdays. Holidays. Boyfriends. I remember my parents dying in a car wreck when I was 19. I still felt the heartache of that day. Faded, but still there. Officer Keshner was patient, silent, while I stared down at this gory image of myself, processing. I looked up at him, his eyes meeting mine. There was a hard exterior to him, but I sensed a kindness too. He wanted answers almost as much as I did. He held my gaze for another moment, then dropped his eyes to the third picture. It was grotesque. The image was a shallow hole, grave, filled with body parts. Some were deformed or mutated. There was a severed arm with 2 hands, a leg without a knee, and the heads. They were cruel imitations of me with varying degrees of imperfection. I grabbed the trash can from the floor, feeling sick once more. But there was nothing left in my stomach. The fourth picture was another angle of the body parts. The fifth picture was different. It was smaller than the first four. It was in color. The others had been black and white, and looked as if it was taken with a regular digital camera. It had a timestamp on the bottom right. Yon 9, 2021, 8:16 a.m. I snatched it off the table and held it close to my eyes, taking in every detail. It was me again, whole, healthy, alive, and in the world. It was a candid shot of me, sitting on a bench somewhere, possibly a park. I was wearing the jacket I bought from that thrift store, and the shoes I paid way too much for in this fancy shop downtown. I hated them because they pinched my toes and rubbed my heel, but I wore them because they were too expensive to leave in the closet. But this still wasn't me. Not the me currently sitting in the police station. I was trapped in an underground nightmare for the entirety of 2021. My mouth hung open in shock. I flipped the image around Keshner. How? Suffice it to say, we don't know. These four pictures, Hay swept his hand over the other photographs, were taken by our crime scene techs. This one, he pointed at the image in my hand, was sent to us. Sent? By whom? When? I demanded. It was left in an envelope on the front desk. It had your name and case number written on it. There were no fingerprints on the exterior or interior of the envelope. None on the photo, and none on the note that came with it. Keshna explained. There are cameras everywhere in here. You didn't see who left it. I was almost yelling at him, frustrated beyond belief. No. Who? We have combed through our security footage. We get a lot of foot traffic in and out of here. We have followed up with everyone that could be identified on the tapes going back a week before it was found. We've got nothing. No leads, he admitted, sounding defeated. Wait, you said there was a note. What note? What did it say? I asked. Unsure, I wanted to know. The note was typed. It had directions to that body. He pointed to the second picture, and to the disposal site of the body parts. That was it. We checked it out, and this is what we have. Someone wanted us to find all of this, but we can't understand who or why at this point. I had nothing to contribute aside from my horror and revulsion, so I was sent home. Michelle tried her best to calm me on the drive back home, but we were both filled with dread as we stood in front of my apartment door. A large envelope was taped to it, and in thick black letters it said, "Open now." Michelle reached her hand up to pull it off the door, but I smacked it away. Liz, we have to see what's in there, she said, in her most reasonable tone. The words were caught in my throat. I wanted to open it. I wanted to throw it away. I wanted to burn down the door and run until I couldn't run anymore. I stood, transfixed, at this innocent or deadly message. Call the police. Ask for Officer Keshner. Tell him. I trailed off, unsure. Okay. Michelle didn't need me to finish. She was pulling her phone from her pocket and dialing before I finished speaking. She got Keshner on the line, explained what we found. He arrived within minutes, along with 2 other cops. I had been rooted to the spot, as if standing on a landmine. When he carefully removed the envelope, I relaxed, but only slightly. He had latex gloves on his massive hands. He was careful not to rip the envelope as he opened it. It contained a single item, a DVD. It was just the disc, a rereadable one. One side had a sticker on it like a label that said, Test hash 3, con, attempt hash 7. The handwriting was different from the envelope. This was slanted, cramped, and untidy. "Do you have a DVD player?" Keshner asked us. I shook my head no. Michelle said she had a PlayStation that would probably work. "All right, we will have to take this in for evidence, but, Miss Lafleur, do you want to see what's on it before we go?" No, I don't. I want this to be over, I thought. But I found myself nodding my head, yes, and walking over to Michelle's place to watch the damn thing anyway. Michelle and I sat on our couch. Officer Keshner stood near the TV, controller in hand, loading up the disc. The video started. You could see a bright, white room. In the center was a woman in a wheelchair. Her face was partially covered in thick bandages that obscured her forehead, nose, cheeks, and chin. Ding Weinsey. Her eyes looked glassy, groggy. She was wearing a white hospital gown, and her legs were covered by either a thin white blanket or sheet. There was a rhythmic chime sound every few seconds. It was low and unobtrusive. A voice began to speak, but the owner remained off screen. I knew that voice, the deep tone and strange cadence. The Dr. Dog. "What is your name?" he asked. The woman did not respond. He repeated the question, a little louder and more insistent. Still no reply. There was a sharp buzz and a yelp from the woman. The question again. "Beep, beep," she tried, trying to shake her answer from her mouth. Another quick buzz and a yelp. "Bianca, Sis, Sinclair." "Incorrect. Your name is Elizabeth Lafleur," he stated. I slipped into my stomach and chilled my every nerve. Another round of therapy for test subject hash 3. Nurse. Up the dose. Double. This one is stubborn. And the video ended. I could not look away from the screen, but I felt everyone else's eyes upon me. I felt like an imposter. Was I? Who sent this? Why? I am a nobody. There was simply nothing about me that would be interesting enough to make more of me. Or was that the point? I was holding Michelle's hand when the video started. I kept squeezing harder as it played. When it ended, I felt guilty. She pulled her hand from mine and winced. Officer Keshner turned to me, mouth open in either surprise or disgust. "This was here when you got home?" he asked. "Yeah, just like you found it. We didn't touch it," I confirmed. Oak. We will have to send everything out to try and verify this is real. It'd be someone's idea of a joke. Anyone who read about you a few months ago could have put this together. We'll see if there are any fingerprints," he was explaining when I cut him off. "No, I think it's real. That room. I've been there. It's exactly the same. Even that weird hum. I think from the lights. It's the same, I said. I was beyond positive this wasn't a hoax. Keshner examined my face. I'm not sure what he was searching for, but seemed to find it. Then nodded. All right then. We still have to investigate it, but I will try to run down any leads on this. Don't get your hopes up though. This isn't much to go on. We'll start with this Bianca. See if there's anything out there about her going missing or dead. He didn't say the word, but I knew. Which would be worse? Living, convinced you are someone else, or dying? A few officers went through both Michelle's and my apartments, checking for any sign of intrusion. Keshner checked the windows and doors to make sure they were secure. He pulled a business card from his wallet, wrote something on the blank backside of it, and handed it to me. This top number is my personal cell. The bottom number is my direct line at the station. If anything comes up or you need me, call. I don't care what time, he told me, and then he left. It was such a kind gesture. I almost cried. He believes me. I had two people in the world that truly believed me. Michelle and now Keshner. I looked at the card, flipped it over, and realized I had never even asked for his first name. It was Mark. Chapter 5. Michelle isn't Michelle. That night Michelle insisted on staying over. She suggested we have a slumber party, like the good old days. I didn't want to kill her mood, and admit I don't remember any of our sleepovers. We didn't exactly live close to each other. I just took comfort in her being this relentlessly positive force in my life. I had escaped months ago, but that coldness had not fully left my bones. I was in my own place, but it took Michelle being here, fully accepting me, not doubting, not pressing for answers I didn't have, to get it to finally sink in, warming me from the inside. A nagging little voice in the back of my mind said, "She's never asked you any questions about that time. Does she really believe me? Is she just playing along? Am I that fragile?" I dismissed the thought. I was lucky to have Michelle as family and friend. I would be lost without you, Michelle, I said as the credits rolled on our second John Hughes film of the night. You're my best friend. Thank you for... There wasn't a big enough word. Everything. She looked at me in mild surprise. Her mouth opened slightly, as if to speak but thought better of it, and gave me a big too-tight hug instead. She pulled back, looking at the ground, wiped away a tear, and said, "No thanks necessary. We're families, do. That's what families do." This was thoroughly not my experience from life, but I left it alone. I felt like I was finally coming home. I still had the nightmares. I still called Mark on a semi-daily basis for updates, but the next few weeks felt almost normal. I worked from home answering calls for an insurance company. I had groceries delivered. Michelle said the one, and only one. Good thing is that I completely missed the whole COVID thing. Everyone was in lockdown. So, it's not like you were really missing out, she added one day after telling me about the pandemic. She used to be such a quiet, mousy little thing, but she had developed a wonderfully dark sense of humor in my absence. She would joke, seemingly callously, about my missing time. Anyone outside might get offended, but I enjoyed it. It took the weight from it. lessened the sting. If I could laugh at it, then it couldn't beat me. One night, after a particularly difficult day, I lay awake, memorizing my ceiling. My eyes felt like they were spring-loaded, popping back open every time I tried to force them shut. Mark told me my case wasn't going anywhere. They had discovered that there was a Bianca Sinclair from Chicago. She had gone missing 3 years ago, never found, and there were no leads. Another dead end. Michelle was fast asleep on my couch. I could hear the snoring she always denied she made. My life before was completely gone. No pictures, no keepsakes, nothing to truly prove I am the original me. I gave a sample of my DNA, and it was tested against the body in the pieces. They didn't have the exact DNA as me, but they were familial matches, as if we were all siblings. The more we uncovered, the more questions I had. I turned over on my side, restless and exhausted. I looked out my window to night beyond. Then I screamed. The sound erupted from me as pure, unadulterated fear and panic. I sat bolt upright, but could not make myself move from the bed. I was paralyzed with a fear I thought I had left in the dark place. A few moments later, Michelle burst into my room, a kitchen knife in her right hand. She looked wildly around. "What?" she yelled, barely audible over my continued cries. I pointed at the window where he had stood, watching me, just like he did in the hospital. Michelle ran to the window, looked left, right, up, and down. "Nothing is there." "Liz." "What? Nothing is there? What happened?" I stopped yelling. Hard, painful gasps ripped through me as I attempted to speak. Him. It was that doctor. She was watching me, and I pointed at the window again, with all the accusation I could muster. Michelle sat down next to me. "Shh. You're okay. That doctor is dead. Remember?" She laid her hand on my shoulder. The weight of it was soothing. She was looking away, toward the window, took a deep, steadying breath, and then looked straight into my eyes. Or dreamed it. There is no one there. I wasn't asleep. He was there. "Where's my phone? I have to call Mark." I insisted, sitting up and reaching to my nightstand for my phone. Michelle reached it before I did, held it close to her chest, and made a hold-on kind of gesture. "Don't call Mark," she said quickly, then added, more calmly, "Not right now. You know the doctor is dead. You ran right past his body, right? Mark even showed you the picture of his body. He can't have been at your window." She was right. Logic was breaking through the fight or flight, and, of course, she was right. He was dead. His body was a mangled heap. But that little voice chimed in. "There's more than one of you. There could be more than one doctor." Sleep was foregone conclusion at this point. Michelle seemed agitated. She had always been so solid and reassuring. I reminded myself that I did just wake her in the middle of the night with a not-so-gentle panicked screaming alarm. But she didn't leave me alone. She urged me to come into living room, watch some TV, maybe eat some junk food, and we could both calm our nerves. She grabbed a bag of chips, a couple sodas, and plopped down on one end of the couch. She still had my phone. She had placed it in the pocket of her pajama pants. She was already on edge, so I didn't ask for it right away. By the end of the third episode of Friends, we were both able to laugh, if only weakly, at the show, and I casually asked for my phone back. She eyed me suspiciously for a moment. I put my hands up and assured her, "I won't call Mark tonight, promise." She huffed but pulled my phone from her pocket and handed it over. "I won't call, but I never said I won't text," I thought. She refocused on the show, and I positioned myself on the couch where my phone was not visible to her, pretending to play a game. I texted, "Hey, Mark. Sorry to bother you so late. It may be nothing, but I could have sworn the doctor was just standing on the balcony outside my bedroom window. Michelle thinks I hallucinated it, but I am almost certain it was real. I waited for his reply. He was working nights this week and usually replies quickly. 10 minutes passed. Nothing. 15. 30. After an hour, I excused myself to the bathroom and tried calling. No answer. I called his direct line at the station. Voicemail. Doctor. He had always answered. Always. I took deep breaths, swatting away the worst-case scenario thoughts. He's just busy. He's a cop. This doesn't mean something is wrong. A soft knock at the door. "Liz, you good?" I prickled at this. "I am in the bathroom. I'm fine." She could give me 5 minutes alone. I looked again at my silent phone. "I'm fine," I said, irritably. The next day, I went down to the station, still having received no response from Mark. I told Michelle I was running to the store. When I arrived, the whole place was bustling with action. It took a few minutes for anyone to register that I was there. Another officer, one that frequently worked with Mark, spotted me and marched over. Sur la fleur," he started. His tone made my stomach drop. "Officer Kesher, Mark, he's in the hospital. He was shot last night." "What? What? No. Oh, is he all right?" I was reeling. Is this my fault? It couldn't be a coincidence the same night I see that man that Mark gets shot. He went out on a domestic call, and when he was getting into his car to come back, someone shot him. He is in critical condition. That's all we know. He was in surgery for hours, he told me. "What hospital? Can I go see him?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not right now. We have to keep this quiet for now, at least until we have more information. We haven't even called his family yet. I will call you with updates." "I'm sorry, Mom." He hung his head, defeated. I drove home in a stupor. I should have called him immediately. If I had called him, maybe. I walked through my door to find Michelle sitting on my couch waiting for me. I felt a sudden rush of anger at her. "Why?" I yelled at her. She jumped, alarmed at my outburst. "Why didn't you let me call him? Why, Michelle?" I was sobbing now. All the emotion held at bay broke through, and I could barely breathe. "What are you talking about?" "Call who?" "Mark." She stood up, walking towards me with that same careful calm that I hated in this moment. I didn't want to be calm. I didn't want to move on. I wanted my anger. I wanted my pain. It made me feel human. I needed to feel real. She tried to put her hands on my shoulders. I jerked away. Her face looked bitter and angry. You can't blame me for a cop being shot while on duty. It's part of their job. She spit the words at me, but instead of anger, I felt fear. I didn't immediately understand why what she said rattled me that way. I backed away as the pieces clunked heavily into place. I didn't. Shut up. The voice in my head was setting off alarms. Stop talking. I never said he was shot. It hasn't been on the news. Only his mother was informed. Get out. Get away now. Now. I tried to recover. How did she know? I'm sorry, Michelle. I didn't mean to blame you. I'm just upset, I said, hoping she bought it. I think I just need some time. Alone. To process this, okay? Her eyes examined me, still wary. Her voice was incredibly level as she replied, I understand, sweetie. I'll be at my place if you need anything at all. All right? She gave me an awkward hug and walked out. My heart was hammering in my chest so badly it was painful. Chapter 6. Running for her life. If she knows about Mark, what else does she know? Is she really Michelle? If not, then who? And the question I could not escape, the one that haunted my every breath. Why? I rushed to my room, slung open the closet, ripping clothes from hangers, dragging clothes from drawers, and stuffing them into a big duffel bag. I had nearly finished packing up the essentials when I heard my door creak open. I held my breath, listening intently. I was in the bathroom. There was a big metal baseball bat in my closet. It was maybe 20 feet from me. I darted out of the bathroom, across my carpeted bedroom floor, and into the closet, just in time to see a shadow pass by the crack under my bedroom door. I gripped the bat tightly, positioned, and poised to swing away. Then I heard Michelle's voice call out, Hey Liz, I forgot my purse. I was just grabbing it. Don't freak out. I'm gonna head back to my apartment. Love you. I didn't say a word. I waited for the sound of the door again. I kept the bat in hand as I grabbed my duffel bag and keys, ready to leave. I didn't know where I was going to go, but anywhere had to be safer than here. I opened my bedroom door and dropped my keys. I bent down to grab them when a foot connected with my chin. I tasted blood and fell backwards. Michelle was standing over me, a needle in her hand. Stay still. You couldn't just leave it alone. Just live your life. Move on. No. They said you were stubborn. She fumed as she squatted down, intent on injecting me with whatever was in the needle. The bat. I remembered it just in time. I swung it as hard as I could. It made a hard, disgusting crack as it met the side of her head. She dropped to the ground, like a rag doll. There was no blood. Her eyes were wide, unblinking. Her mouth hung open. She's dead. The thought made me feel relief and overwhelming grief. No, 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 no. Michelle, please, wake up. Please, wake up. I'm sorry. I scrambled over to her, shaking her shoulders, unwilling to accept that she was gone. She was my family, my best friend. This can't be happening. What did I do? A cold sweat covered every inch of my skin, and I shivered. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the needle. I smacked it with the bat as if it were a poisonous spider. This isn't Michelle. She was going to drug you, take you back to them. I clumsily got to my feet. Shaking violently, I grabbed my keys, the bag, gave Michelle one last, sorrowful look before bolting out the door. I had to leave her behind. I had to leave Mark behind. I had to leave all the questions and all my doubts on the floor next to her. I had to survive. That was back in December, when I left everything behind. I threw away my phone, cashed out my bank account, and sold my car for quick cash. I used some of that to buy another car from some guy online. He signed over the title, but I didn't register it. I kept his tags. I spent the first couple of weeks just driving, sleeping, on the rare occasions I could actually sleep, in the backseat of my car, in parking lots and rest stops. Here and there, I would pay cash at a roadside motel. I wanted to know how Mark was doing, but going to the hospital was out of the question. I picked up a couple cheap pay-as-you-go phones and used one to call the hospital to get his status. The charge nurse wouldn't tell me much, except that he was currently in stable condition. At least that meant alive. I tossed that phone as soon as I hung up. Basically, I was doing all the things I had seen and anyone in a show or movie had done to not be found. For a month, those things seemed to serve me well. At the beginning of February, someone found me. I don't know how. My instincts have been horribly awry since the whole thing started. Honestly, they were probably way off long before then. But something about this told me it wasn't the big bad. Them. I had one of my infrequent motel nights, and the next morning, there was a note on the floor in front of the door. It was a folded sheet of copy paper. I stayed where I was on the bed, eyeing this intrusive document like it was a viper poised to strike. How? I had sat outside the motel for an hour, making sure I would only interact with the one front desk clerk. I checked the lobby before checking in, and there were no cameras. Were there cameras I couldn't see? To say this place was barely a one-star facility would be generous. Surely hidden cameras were too luxurious and would deter the bulk of the intended clientele. I checked the time. I had only been asleep for 3 hours. Carefully, I inched toward the door, tiptoed to the peephole, and looked around. No one. I didn't expect to see anyone, but I had to check. I picked up the paper, and the outward part of the fold was blank. I opened it and typed in small black letters, "You are not safe. Find me." Below that was an address and instructions on how to approach. I was to wear a blue shirt and my green tennis shoes. I had to park my car on the left side of the building and get out of it from the passenger's side. It said if I did not follow these instructions precisely, I would not meet the author of this note. Now my only question was, do I want to? I had about 4 hours to decide. The address was only a 20-minute drive, another motel 2 exits away. I placed the note on the bed, backed away from it, as if seeing it from a greater distance would tip the scales one way or the other. It didn't. My stomach churned. When did I last eat? Thought popped into my head and I flicked it away just as swiftly. I didn't care. I was there in that cold room, standing like a statue on that threadbare carpet. The indecision had me stuck. Then, without consciously choosing, I let out a grunt of frustration, rubbed my eyes, and walked into the bathroom. I splashed my face with cold water, saw my tired, unkempt reflection, in the greasy mirror. It had been almost a week since I had a good hot shower. I walked back to the bed, lifted my bag from the floor, removed my toiletries and a clean towel. Even if there had been any here, I wouldn't trust it. The water didn't get hot, but I felt better after I was clean. I had to go. I knew there were dangers in going, but if this person had answers, could I really pass that up? It could be the same one that left the picture at the police station or the DVD on my apartment door. If they wanted to hurt me, they would have done that, right? I dressed in a blue shirt, jeans, and green tennis shoes. As I tied the laces, I remembered the day I bought these. Michelle and I were on a mission to rebuild my wardrobe since all my possessions were gone, and I couldn't keep borrowing her stuff. We went to a local thrift store, and these shoes were sitting on a rack. Kermit green. Michelle hated them. Do not get those ugly things. Looks like they made them out of Kermit the Frog. Michelle laughed as I tried them on. I loved them and ignored her eye roll when I put them in my cart. The memory echoed across the time and distance between then and now. Too much had happened. The vision of Michelle's laughter caused me physical pain. I packed up my things, wiped down any surface I touched. This may have been pointless because I probably have hair in the shower or on the bed, but I felt better doing it. I got in my car and drove to the McDonald's almost halfway between my motel and my destination. I had to kill 2 more hours. The wait was agony. Time was not moving. I watched cars drift in and out of the drive-thru, people walking in and out. I gave in and bought a meal there myself, forcing down every bite. I saw 1 million people pass by me during the 1,000 hours I sat there, waiting for the clock to tick forward. Finally, there were only 15 minutes to go. My stomach did a backflip as I shifted into drive and made my way down the road, hoping the destination wasn't my final one. Final chapter. Michelle returns. But how? Room 21. B.com. I had knocked. The seconds ticked by, and I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, feel it in my throat. Then came the soft metallic rattle of a slide chain from the other side of the door. The doorknob twisted, and the door opened. The hand shot out from the dark chasm of the doorway, grabbing me, covering my mouth. I reared back, an electric shock pulsing through me, putting my legs into overdrive. But then an arm ensnared my torso, making escape impossible. I was being dragged inside the dark room as the safety of the world beyond. The swirling light from the sun, the bitter chill of the wind, all the color and freedom was extinguished as the door shut with a snap that might as well have been the closing of a coffin. I wriggled and writhed like an eel trying to break loose from whoever had me locked in their clutches. Then a voice sounded in my ear, so close I could feel the breath from their urgent but quiet whisper. Stop struggling. I am not here to hurt you. I knew that voice as well as my own. It was Michelle. If you woke up tomorrow and saw your own face staring at you from across the street, how would you prove you're the real one?